Good afternoon. This presentation is titled Special Education Interviews. This is for EDL 853 and this is module number 4. My name is Thomas Martin. Okay, I had three individuals that I conducted the interview with. The first column will be for the special education teacher, and these are their responses in each of the columns, and they'll be consistent throughout the slides. So the first column will be for the special education teacher. Second column will be for the administrator, and the third column will be for the paraprofessional. The first question that I had to ask was their knowledge base of the school district's child find procedures. The special education teacher referenced the Count Your Kid in clinic. She said that this was just a place where kids went to get screened using the dial. This assesses their vision, hearing, and motor. And that's just how we basically first identify students as needing either further evaluations or things like that. And that was her knowledge base of the Count Your Kid in clinic. Next was the administrator. He stated that flyers are posted around town that are letting the public know that Count Your Kid in clinic is approaching. He said that this is for children from birth to age 3 that are screened for potential delays in a variety of areas, and that this is at no cost to the parents. Both of those responses were exactly right. I had difficulty not disclosing, not helping out with those answers because I actually conduct the Count Your Kid in clinics, so that was kind of difficult. I kind of felt as though I was baiting them for having the correct answer or not. And next was the paraprofessional. She said that Bright Beginnings is the place where they get identified. And this is just our local preschool, and they identify students with special needs, which was also accurate. But for those ages birth to 3 years old, they're not quite enrolled in preschool yet. So that is for our child find procedures for the district. Most challenging part of their role with special education. First was the special education teacher. And she stated, just to give you some background knowledge, she is a special education teacher within a self-contained classroom, and those are for students with more severe exceptionalities. Her most challenging part is educating students with a variety of ability levels in the same classroom. So what she's referring to there is that we have a significant variance of ability levels present in that classroom because we have exceptionalities that range from OHI, autism, and intellectual disability all within that same classroom. And so it's difficult finding a curriculum that addresses all of those various needs at the same time. So it takes a lot of work, and she relies very heavily on very good paraprofessional support in that classroom. Next is the administrator, and he said the most challenging part is determining the appropriate services for a student, including placement in the least restrictive environment. So just determining where the least restrictive environment is for that particular student, and then when the general education classroom is not appropriate for a student. So I know the hope is always to get students into the general education classroom, but if they're exhibiting behaviors that are either harmful to themselves or others, or distraction to themselves, or if they're not benefiting, it has to be a placement where it's mutually beneficial. So at times, it's not appropriate for a student to be educated in the general education classroom, and so that can be a very difficult conversation to have with parents. Next is a paraprofessional. She said that the most difficult part of working with special education is figuring out what a nonverbal student needs when they are upset. So this particular paraprofessional tends to be paired with just 1 or 2 students throughout the day. Part of her day is in the regular education classroom, assisting with reading and some of those academic tasks. But another part of her day is in the self-contained classroom. And so that can be with some students that lack expressive communication skills. Most rewarding part of their job with special education. First, we have the special education teacher. She says the most rewarding part is when we've modified behaviors of a student to the point where they can spend most of their days in regular education with para support. And also when she gets to walk by and see them working like all the other students in the classroom. And I must admit that that's probably the most rewarding part of my job as well, that when they came to us and their behaviors prevented them from being educated in the general education curriculum, to then see them being educated in the general education curriculum, acting just like all of the other non-identified students is very rewarding. Next is the administrator. He says the most rewarding part is when we send our students off to the middle school. And I think about how far they've come since their first day of kindergarten. Next is the paraprofessional. And the most rewarding part of her job is when students tell me how much they're going to miss me over the summer. She's loved by all of our students, so I bet that is the most rewarding. I bet she hears it quite a bit. Next is supervision of special education staff. Special education teacher. When supervised, I want to know that my supervisor is genuinely concerned about how things are going and not just involved when there are problems. So she wants to know that like he really wants to be able to help, because she elaborated on this a little bit with me because I was kind of confused about that response. But rather than, because she has had an administrator that she worked with that only stepped in when there was a problem. She wants somebody to step in and just make sure that things are going well. Next was the administrator. He stated, I supervise special education staff differently, since my expectations are slightly different for them. I place a lot of emphasis on their IEPs because that is a thorough document that explicitly states what they're working on with them. He also stated that, I ran out of room on this one, he also stated that he will just go and check in on students from time to time to ensure that they do have the services that were agreed upon in the IEPs. Next is the paraprofessional. She stated that I don't want someone watching over me all the time. I understand that we all need to be checked up on, but I get nervous when someone is watching me, so I can't do my job right like that. So that was her response to that question, which I can relate. I can't handle someone watching over my shoulder when I'm trying to type or complete work. Work with parents. Or work with parents. Special education teacher. I communicate with parents daily. We frequently discuss concerns to see if changes in one setting are affecting the other. Therefore, we really operate as a team to meet the students' needs both at home and at school. And I love that response because so then the IEP tends to be one of merely just putting all of that documentation in paper. That's really how these relationships are supposed to work. It's supposed to be constant communication when concerns arise. Next is the administrator. I actively listen to parent concerns and try to address those concerns in a timely manner. Not every concern needs to result in an IEP meeting. So I try to have the special education teacher involved in those conversations with the parent, so that they can get those concerns addressed prior to it becoming problematic and in need of an IEP. I tend to be pulled into a lot of those meetings as well. Next is the paraprofessional. She stated that she does not interact with parents at all other than just greeting them in the mornings or in the afternoons when she sees them, because she doesn't want to be asked a question that she can't answer. And I agree with that response as well. Work with regular education teachers. Special education teachers said I work very closely with regular education teachers. On occasion, they spend more time with some of my students than I do. Sometimes they see a completely different student than I do due to the different settings and expectations. Next is the administrator. He checks in with regular education teachers to make sure that students with IEPs are successful in their classroom with supports currently. And also, he wants to ensure that if there are needs that the student has, now would be the time to disclose those, make modifications. So he touches base with them frequently, just mainly around the time of the IEP to see if changes need to be made. He tends to kind of serve as a go-between sometimes between the special education teacher and the regular education teacher. It's a fairly large building, so I definitely appreciate him for that. Next is the paraprofessional. She spends most of her days in regular education classrooms working with students. She tries to help out those regular education teachers as much as possible, but she's also concerned that she doesn't want it to ever take away from the time that she's supposed to be working with the student. So when she's there in the classroom, she will, make copies for the teacher as long as it isn't a time where the student is requiring her assistance. Advice for a first-year administrator. The special education teacher stated, treat all students similarly. A student with special needs appreciates a positive interaction with the principal just as much, if not more, than students without an IEP. And next is the principal. Always remember why you wanted to become an administrator. Don't get hung up on the politics of the profession. Do good work that makes you feel like you made a positive impact on a child's life. Next is the paraprofessional, and this was just have fun with the kids. Don't spend all your time disciplining them, and I definitely agree with that. Role of special education teacher and principal. The special education teacher stated that the role of the special education teacher is to implement the IEP and provide supports to meet the student's needs. The role of the principal is to make sure the services are being provided and attending IEP meetings. The administrator stated that the role of the special education teacher is to determine and implement components of the IEP and provide those services. The role of the principal is to sign off on the IEP and make certain that the IEPs are being followed. The paraprofessional stated that the role of the special education teacher is to write the IEP and tell me where to go. So basically to tell her what services she is to provide. The role of the principal is to watch over the school and make sure everything is running smoothly. Desired characteristics of aspiring administrators. The special education teacher wants an administrator who is compassionate, intelligent, and firm. The administrator said someone that is knowledgeable, flexible, as strict adherence to a schedule is not always possible in a school building, and I can attest to that. And then also one that is hardworking. The paraprofessional said that she looks for someone that is nice and someone that really cares about kids. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.